two presentations by Gunther and Professor Kovač. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for giving me the opportunity to speak in front of you. Well, my topic is abduction and best explanation. And before I start, let me give you two examples. First example, obviously somebody is killed. Here, this is one of the old Miss Marple movies. And so the question is, who's done it? So who was the killer, who was the murderer? The second, this is in German, but it's quickly to translate. The point is, we have around 60,000 people in prison in 2011, and 5.5% are women. So 60,000 and just 5.5% of women, and the question is, why is this so?
There's discrimination.
It's obvious.
More sophisticated. More sophisticated.
Okay, obviously it's should be a sophisticated form of discrimination. We could discuss this also in material terms. Okay, fine. So obviously there are two questions. First, who's done, and the second one, why is this so? Why is this the case? And that brings me to my topic. First, I'm talking about the fundamentals, which is a little bit abstract, but not too abstract. And I'm talking about abduction, then best explanation. And I contrast this with the concept of distinction between substantial and circumstantial evidence, and I give you a short summary. Fundamentals. First, fundamental strategies. You can see it, it's kind of based on decision theory, what I'm talking about. It's, it's in between the really abstract, like logic, and between the not so abstract, some middle ground, I would say, what I'm doing. First, what is a strategy, a pattern of a sequence of technical actions. That's very, very basic, that's sufficient for our case. What is more interesting is we always need an agent. We have preferences, we have uncertainties, we have the scarcity of resources, and there's competition. This is actually the most important point. There's competition among strategies. Inter alia, that means strategies from more agents, or especially strategy used just by one agent. The winner obviously should be the best strategy, and the best strategy should be better than all other strategies. That's trivial. What is not so trivial is this includes especially the same strategy played by another agent. That includes the inversion, so always do the opposite. So, an example, if you have a weather forecast which is in 10% right, you can just always say this opposite, and you are 90% right. So quite simple. It should be better than lottery. It should be better than random, of course, and it should be better than a killer strategy. A killer strategy is a strategy just with the purpose to kill other strategies out of the game. Once again, it's decision theory and game theory, just the basic concepts from there, but I'm not going into the mathematics. Among the group of strategies, you have strategies to reach special goals. One of the goals, for example, is to reach statements which correspond to reality. So I don't talk about truth, for example, like that, I just talk about correspondence. So you build strategies, and your goal is that you make statements with map, you could say, or correspond to reality, whatever. What options do we have? Observation-based strategies. Of course, it's just a little bit too simplistic, just look at the world. Second, once again, lottery, just pure random. And third, and most important for our case, inferential strategies. That means basically you have statements, and those statements associate with other statements. Just put it just say associate and nothing more. And of course, if we deal with legal argumentation or argumentation in general, you focus on inferential strategies, and this is the second, the third, and the last of the fundamentals. Okay, there are some important distinctions, and this is actually, from my point, is very important. Let me start with the not so important things. First of all, this includes intuition and reflective rationale, something like that. It includes qualitative and quantitative strategy, that's terms coming out from statistics. Basically it means quantitative strategies coming from mathematics, application of mathematical formula, and qualitative all other basically based on just simple text, natural text. And we have also included all strategies in terms of logical, analytical or synthetic truth, as we distinguish in analytical philosophy, which is also not that important. What important is the idea that you have to decide between simple strategies, just associating a statement on given other statements, and and other strategies that also support the second statement. So it's not only the association of a new statement, but it's also supporting the new statement. And this will be the most important thing from my point of view, because now I'm focusing on some inferential strategies, some special cases, and I'm going to Peirce distinction. And Peirce basically, as I think you all know, distinguish between deduction, induction, and abduction. I have my own definitions, because you can fill books with what exactly is deduction, what exactly is induction, but whatever, we actually don't need it. I said that because my definition is not the mainstream definition. Anyway, deduction as the application of logical and valid inference schemes, like you all know, modus ponens, modus tollens, etc. All that stuff which comes from here, and basically are based on propositional logic, predicate logic, or whatever. So this is quite common sense. This is quite mainstream. The second one, induction, is in my interpretation, is the inference from singular statements to universal statements. Also quite mainstreams, but what I'm not really mainstream is the definition of abduction. And abduction, here we have the scheme. The scheme, okay, the scheme is abduction. Of course, it's not in logic. In terms of logic, it's not valid. So it's not the application of a logical valid inference form, which, by the way, of course, is the same with induction. And we have A follows B, so that the material implication, and B follows A, and of course this is the confirmation of the consequences, so it's of course no logically valid form. And the very important question, by the way, I will come to this back later, is: does application of this give you anything? Do you gain anything from something which seems a little bit reasonable, but it's not logically valid? This is one of the questions which are not quite not quite answered in argumentation theory. And as I said, I don't have the usual definition. My difference is that I say, explicitly say that the A is not a simple statement, but the A is always an explanation. So that abduction is always about not simple statement, but always about explanations, and explanations is a certain special form of statement. So you have the set of statements, and within you have the set of explanations.
Why do you say about that the inference from facts and then you say from a statement? Why don't you use the same idea? You say in the first...
Yeah, you're right.
Why
yeah, you're right. Yeah, of course. Yeah, this is an error. Yeah, it should be a statement. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So an explanation. So I have to say, what is an explanation? An explanation, put it simply, is the answer for why question. Why is it the case that the percentage of women is so low in the prisons, and some other examples. So you see that, by the way, the you've done it example is for this special point is not a quite good example, but I come to that back later. So what does abduction do? It gives you a new idea Dominantly in explanation, I would say, I have to think about if there are exceptions, but I couldn't find one until now. So it gives you adduction simply just gives you a new idea. And the point is, so it is in terms of rhetorics, is a strategy of inventio, the first step of building the speech, and it leaves the reliability neutral. So that means abduction in my reading does not support the conclusion. So abduction does not support the conclusion, as you have maybe with other strategies. And this is very strong to say that it does not support it. If we can discuss this later, but I would say it's the case that with abduction you don't get any support for the conclusion, but at least you get a new conclusion. And so if you have the new conclusion, of course you have to have some support for the conclusion. And this is where the best explanation comes in. So you get the new conclusion, you have, let's say, why do abduction? Because it's a quite simple form that you can order your thoughts to come to the explanation. Let's put it another way. You have the facts are built in statements in the criminal case, so that the dead man is lying there, and you have some other facts or afterwards put into statement, and you need an explanation, and an explanation puts all together. So the bigger picture all makes it logical. For doing this step, which is quite not a simple step. For doing this step, you need a scheme, and this scheme is usually in the theory of science. It's usually somewhere called abduction or something like that. So abduction gives you a new idea about the explanation, but it does not support the explanation. This is actually my main point. So how to support, of course, this, and this is where the best explanation comes into play. The best explanation means that there is competition among explanations. With abductions, you have just one explanation. You don't have the competition. So if you go to the next step is now you think about many or at least all possible explanations, and then you have competition among the explanations. And now the idea is what form of competition can it be, and of course what do you gain from it. One of the available options, maybe there are more, but I've found at least those. The first option is the falsification. So you have, let's say, 10 explanations, and you try to falsify them, and the one which is at least falsified, put it in this way, then is the winner. So quite simple, the Popperian scheme. The second is the base formula. You apply the base formula to all the statements, and one reaches the highest probability, the highest P, and this one is the winner. Interesting question is, what is the relationship between those two? The second is the least bad explanation. This is my own idea actually, but it's of course not my own idea, it's just from literature. You test all competing arguments, and I would say, okay, all of them have some contradictions in a way, because most of them are put into natural language, and you have some interpretation errors, etc., etc. And the one which contradicts just with not so important, or at least supported available statements is the winner. So if a strategy contradicts with a very important of the sentences or the statements you already own, then this is not good, and if it's just with a minor sentence, it's better. And the one that contradicts with just the minor sentences is the winner. And second, and the last is the soccer system. The soccer system means any strategy competes. They always compete pairwise with one strategy, and one A and B. And the winner gets to the next round, and the next one competes with another, etc., and you get the winner. And the winner, you don't in terms of mathematics, you don't get a hierarchy, but you find the best one. The best one is clear, not the second, not the third, and so, etc., but the best one is clear. So that's all. What I found. Now let's go to substantial and circumstantial evidence. What I'm trying to do is a model of what actually we do in science, what do we in philosophy, and of course trying to get some kind of principle, let's say some prescriptive model as well. This was the best explanation. Now, let's go back to the crime case. The crime, usually you distinguish between the substantial and the circumstantial evidence. If you talk about substantial evidence, that means that you have, for the best example is here's the trustworthy confession. The actor says it was me. I killed the person. And he says it in front of the police, he says it afterwards because he knows that he did it, and you say it's trustworthy. And if you have this, you can stop there, because if this is trustworthy, then you don't have to look for other things. It's just a matter of 0 and 1. If you have it, it's not relative, it's absolute, it's just a discrete criterion. And if you don't have those criteria, then you can talk about circumstantial evidence. And so you know discrete factor and supported by relative and continuous data. That means what we all call before balances. And this balancing now is actually according to what I said here, which basically also mean that on the way I have some offering for balancing. We could do balancing on those grounds. My last point, actually the first idea with this presentation was to get a system, to get the relationship between best explanation and adduction, because this was not quite so clear for me. That was the first one. The second one is where actually can you apply the best explanation strategy? And let's say, for example, why not in philosophy? Why not, for example, in hard cases of philosophy, let's say in metaphysics? This is talking about ontology. Is this ontological system, for example, just put it another way. Talk about legal philosophy, let's talk about natural law. Does natural law exist or not? Those schemes, actually I don't see any problem with taking the question of does natural law exist in terms of is natural law the best explanation, which is quite not so very new, but you know, the problem is the detail. But why not? This is my idea basically. So try to apply it for hardcore philosophy or legal philosophical questions. So this actually is almost the end of my presentation, with the maybe possible explanation of this idea, at least not the idea. We intuitively we already do it, I think, but with you know, a big understanding for philosophical questions, also for legal questions, because I've not been talking about the legal facts here. And the next thing would be to think about the resources, because in this game there are no scary resources. But afterwards, if you have scary resources, it's a little bit is a new factor, and I think you have to have this factor. And if you have all those factors, I think that's what. Well, it gets complicated. I think it's if I hear it, it sounds so trivial, but for me at least it was complicated enough. Okay, that actually was I wanted to tell you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Gunther. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Gunther. I'm sympathetic with the idea of using the inference to the best explanation in not only in the legal domain but also maybe in philosophy in general. But let's stick to the legal domain, because you gave some examples of criminal cases, and there is a problem there, because inference to the best explanation can be a good way to address evidentiary issues in civil cases where the standard of proof is the preponderance of the evidence. Correct? Why? In criminal cases where the standard of proof is guilt beyond reasonable doubt, you have a problem with inference to the best explanation, because you may be in a situation where the best explanation of what you know is that the guy is guilty, but the explanation is not good enough to reach the standard of proof of guilt beyond reasonable doubt. So, in that sense, maybe you have to change the idea of best explanation in order to give an account of its use in criminal cases, maybe.
Actually, I'm not sure if this is right. Yeah, I think it depends. I mean, if you do the best explanation right, why not? Why isn't it about reasonable doubt? I mean, I'm focused on the reasonable.
The idea
because there's nothing better. Of course, if I think, well, let's put it another way. If we both would know that that it's not possible to argue in a certain case on the basis of substantial evidence. Yes, then the best we have is circumstantial evidence, and in this case, I would say this is beyond reasonable doubt. The problem is, and so actually this is an argument for you, the problem is we actually never know if substantial evidence is possible. But if it's not possible, I would say best explanation is the best we get, and best explanation, then it's for me it would fulfill the notion of beyond reasonable doubt.
Let's try to put it in base terms. Suppose that you have some evidence that allows you to say that in a civil case, the claim of the plaintiff is proved at a degree of 51%. Then you have the best explanation in favor of what the plaintiff claims, so you go with that. You cannot do the same thing in a criminal case, because suppose that the prosecutor has proved his claim at the same probabilistic degree, is 51%. It is the best explanation in that sense, but it's not enough to have proof of the guilt beyond reasonable doubt, because 51% is not beyond reasonable doubt.
Well, actually, I was thinking about this, but I thought it would be sufficient. But what you say is a good explanation, so I will think it over.
Marco?
Maybe just a short answer or opinion that would help the Ginter. But beyond reasonable doubt is not absolute objectivity. So
it's more than
it's more, but then
preponderance of the evidence.
Yeah, that's true. But it's not then you need, because you don't have absolute objectivity, you have some approach towards it.
Just let me put it this way. We have P here. This is 1, this is 0. This is 0. And beyond usually in civil cases, if you hear it, it's okay. Yes. But on the other hand, you're right that nobody. There's no rule that why not. Let's say there's a level which is not at here, but for example is here. Legislator is free to do it like that. And so if it's the case, then yeah, then I think we're right. So if really, I think I don't know if it's a good idea, but you as a legislator you're free. So that would actually support not my opinion, but your opinion.
But that doesn't occur in practice, because you have like for conviction, what if you have like four, to say, expert witnesses against 2 expert witnesses. And so, what is the point where a particular judge is persuaded? It should be, I guess, theoretically you're right, but in practice it doesn't occur.
But very simple observation. I'm no lawyer, but I read many who's done it. That's the expression. This question started with that. And many of those start with both of what you call, what may be called beyond reasonable doubt by police, for example, in Varro cases. But then actually it turns out that somebody else is guilty.
Mm-hmm.
So legal accusation is following your steps, and they are all wrong in many of those who's done it books.
Just so that I'm clear on this, is it the case that, I think that's what you're saying, but is it the case that the best explanation can still be one that fails to meet the threshold?
Yeah.
Your threshold you can put wherever you want.
Maria?
I mean, yeah, it's, of course you don't put it here, yes. Because
So just connecting a little bit with what
Matias.
I thought there was a little gap in the presentation because you convinced me up until the point of explanations, but then I want to know how do you know that you've thought of all the explanations that are possible. So you're showing us with abduction how to get to explanations, and then you're saying among the explanations we think of, we choose the best one. But that only works if we know that we've thought of all the possible explanations, and then we're really done.
well, you know, this is actually this is going to the next step of the resources. Yeah, I mean, what you can make, can make an optimization on the basis of some resources you have. And on the resources you have, you say, okay, with those resources, I have, let's say, so much time to look for explanations, and I have no more resources, and what you have after that time that's sufficient for me, which you actually do. For example, as an emergency doctor, you do it like that. Because the emergency doctor is in a hurry. He has to decide right now. This is completely different case with the pathologist. The pathologist has many years. Yeah, not eternal, but anyway. So the resources in terms of time for the pathologist are completely different to the emergency doctor. But the problem with the emergency doctor is he or she has to decide. So with the resources, you get for example some time, which is the most important resource in this case, and that brings you to another threshold. The threshold is when you stop looking for other explanations. That would be the next.
A question for Giovanni. But regarding your presentation, if doctors, when setting their diagnosis, if they use abduction or inference, the best explanation, and often there is life at stake, why would not a criminal judge use abduction?
Well, the idea is that they are different domains, and the interests at stake are different. And if you have an idea of the criminal trial as a place where, of course, you are interested in finding out who is the guilty person, but at the same time you are very interested in the idea of not convicting an innocent person, then your threshold of proof to convict someone would be quite high, more high than in civil cases. So that is the idea that justifies the idea of the standard, of the high standard of proof beyond reason.
Yeah, but you have an interest not to kill a patient with setting the wrong diagnosis. Also,
I cannot see
if you set the wrong diagnosis with the abduction process,
yeah. But I mean, in the
you can kill your patient, for example. You have an interest not to kill your patient.
Sure.
As a criminal judge has an interest not to convict an innocent person.
In criminal proceedings, false positives are considered to be much worse than false negatives.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is exactly. It's not symmetrical.
Yeah.
It's false positive, false negative. Sometimes there's a waiting.
Another question might be quite superficial. In the best option alternatives, all these processes, I got the impression, but you might have thought about it, that whether you apply them in the alternative or cumulatively, or you just apply them internally, you compare the results, I don't know. But generally, they seem to point to a Occam's razor situation where all the unexpected causal patterns are little by little put by side, and especially if you use it iteratively, they will tend to the peak of the bell curve of causation. Because especially if you rely on statistics, then the first time around you rely on the 51, and then the second time around it's already 52.